So first we are going to talk about this beautiful stuff called foam. I really just use two types of foam depending on the application I'm using it for. Most of the times with bigger planes and places where I need more strength, I'll use this Home Depot foam. Now you get it at Home Depot and it's used for insulating stuff, and it's 1/2 inch thick. It's usually pink and it's kind of dense. It's a little bit heavier, but it's pretty rigid, and this is really good for making like stiffer wings, and it's easy to shape if you have a sharp knife, and it's just good for building stronger structures. Now my favorite kind of foam is this right here. It's called Depron. You can get it at some RC stores that sell it, but basically the most common thickness of this stuff is 6 millimeters. That's how thick this is. Now Depron is really light, and it's pretty strong, it's pretty rigid, but it's mainly really light. So if you're building planes like park flyers that are not going to go super fast and they need to be really light, then this is a great type of foam. If you look over here, you'll see I built this plane out of 6 millimeter Depron. And then I've got a carbon rod in the wing for strength, and also when you want a light wing or something, this is all 6 millimeter Depron right here. And these are just the ribs, those are also 6 millimeter Depron, so everything right there is 6 millimeter. And then I just have a carbon rod in the middle because Depron is kind of not super flexible, but it will bend, so I've got a carbon rod right there to stiffen that up. So you can also get white Depron, and I found white Depron to be a little bit more rigid than black Depron for some reason. But I usually never get 6 millimeter white Depron. Usually I only get white 9 millimeter Depron, and I use this stuff a lot because it's more rigid. It's almost as rigid as pink foam, but it's like 3 times as light. It's also more expensive. But this is really good for making wings and fuselages, so I really like 9 millimeter Depron. This is probably my favorite kind of foam right here. Here's an example of that. I made this wing out of 9 millimeter Depron. It's very nice. So now we're going to talk about what is good to use to add strength to the foam plane. My favorite thing to use is carbon fiber rods. There's a carbon rod right there. Carbon rods are really strong and durable, but the problem is they're really expensive. So instead of using these all the time, I also use for like shorter stuff. I usually don't use wood for wings or wood rods for wings, but these are good for adding strength to stuff like tails of the airplane and just other parts. Like if you go over here on this plane, flip it on over, you're going to find some wooden dowels right there. There's one up here. So those are good for adding strength to not as long places or places that don't need a ton of strength. So if you're building a ribbed wing like this one, it's also a really good idea to use these thin wood strips. Now these are good to put down into the ribs like this, except the reason I didn't use them for this wing is because I didn't have enough of them. But basically if you put this vertically inside the wing, and of course it would go down into the foam like that, but if you put those in the wing, then it'll add a ton of strength, because this is really bendy this way, but if you try and bend it like vertically, it doesn't really bend that easily. Now right now it's just kind of twisting, but when you have ribs around it holding it steady, these are really strong, almost stronger than the carbon rods when they're up on edge like that, and they'd be down in the wing. Here's a picture of a wing that's built like that. We're going to talk about glue. The most common glue I like to use for pretty much everything is hot glue. It's really nice for connecting foam together because it holds really firmly. I used hot glue for all of these, holding everything together on this plane. I used hot glue for everything on that plane. And I basically pretty much almost always use hot glue. But there are some other glues you can use. Like for example, super glue, or known as CA. It's really nice for connecting wood together. Like actually right here I have 2 carbon rods coming together, and I CA'd those together with this super glue stuff. I got this at Hobby King for like $1, I don't know. But then there's another kind of glue you can use. I use this for waterproofing a lot of stuff, like waterproofing receivers and speed controls, and that is epoxy. Basically you take the epoxy and the hardener and mix them together, and it turns into like a super hard plastic pretty much. So these are good for really high strength needs that you could have, like for example waterproofing something or connecting wings together, or I don't know, just something that would need a lot of strength or rigidity or something like that. Those are really good. Now here are some tapes that I use. This is just clear packing tape. I use this a lot for like pretty much everything. As you can come over here to this plane, I don't know if you can see it shiny, but I covered the leading edge with it. I taped over that carbon rod with it. I taped my hinges with it. I pretty much use that tape the most. And then this is just normal masking tape, and I use this for stuff like holding down wires. As you can see, masking tape kind of hold those wires down. So I use that a lot for just not that high strength needs. And then this is called strapping tape, and it's actually got nylon strands inside there. As you can see, it's pretty much like packing tape with nylon inside it, and it's super strong. Like you could hang by a strand of this and it wouldn't break. And I use that for stuff like covering up EPP wings or something where you need a lot of strength. Like as you can see on this leading edge, there's packing tape, and then where's some more stuff with packing? Oh yeah, here's packing tape. Going along here, instead of a carbon rod, I used packing tape, so that adds a lot of strength, and I packing taped up this whole leading edge. So packing or strapping tape basically adds tons of strength to your plane, but it is a little bit more heavy. And for push rods, I use, or not push rods, for control horns, I use Popsicle Sticks. Basically, I just drill a hole in one end and use them as a control horn, like this. As you can see over here, there is a popsicle stick with a hole in it, and that is my control horn for this plane. I also use popsicle sticks a lot for stuff like adding strength to a vertical stabilizer. As you can see, it kind of like props it up and helps add strength. And you can pretty much you don't need to eat popsicles to get popsicle sticks. You can get them in big boxes like that. So that's all the materials I use to build planes, really. I don't really use that much stuff. It's pretty simple. But hey, look, there's me. But basically, yeah, that's all the materials I use, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Flying 5. Kind of a simpler episode, but yeah, that's a good look at the stuff I use to create my airplanes like this one. Hope you enjoyed that episode of Flying 5, and I'll see you next time. Adios.